So, Matt Evans from Keys, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Pleasure. Thanks,
Matt,
Steve.
Matt Evans, fellow lecturer as well. I think you grew up in Aberystwyth, is that right?
No, I didn't grow up in
Okay,
Aberystwyth.
okay.
I studied in Aberystwyth. I
All right,
started.
okay, okay.
I mean, it's I started a degree there, but I didn't finish it. So I'm teaching students now, and I actually flunked my first degree.
Yeah,
There is a story behind it though. It was all part of that Cool Cymru thing. The first time round. That horrific phrase, Cool Cymru.
yeah. I was never
Oh, oh,
comfortable with
oh,
it.
yeah, we got signed basically. I was a student up there, and
Okay,
I was in my third year,
yeah.
and it was like, what do I do? Do I do my dissertation,
Hmm.
or do I sign to 2 Pure Records, the Stereolab label, and
Wow.
go and tour around the UK? So I thought, oh, I'm going to do that. I was like 23 or something, so
Yeah,
I did that instead. And then saw the error of my ways a few years later, and I
maybe
then.
not.
Maybe not. And then I went back to Newport Uni then to study
Okay,
a degree,
yeah.
and I actually finished it then in documentary film and television with the wonderful Chris Morris, Professor Chris Morris. He
Oh,
was,
crazy, Chris.
yeah, he was a brilliant lecturer,
I bet.
huge influence on me actually,
Hmm.
yeah, that was great. I'm so glad I did that. Actually, went back to because Newport Uni was more art school, really.
Yeah,
Aberystwyth
yeah.
Uni is a red brick and all that, and
Hmm.
so I didn't really, I just didn't connect with it. I mean, I loved reading. I did English literature. I love reading and things, and and all that. But I didn't really connect with the university. Whereas the Newport Art School, I just fitted right in, with a bunch of other crazies, really, who just wanted to, experiment and test things,
Brilliant.
and it was very early days of sort of digital editing software. I think we were on like Final Cut Pro 5 or 6 or something, and Pro Tools was just coming in, and I'd grown up, in analog and cassette and record, and then all the things you could do with digital technology. It was just so, it was just great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking at Aberystwyth, because how did you get signed from there? By the way, was there an Aberystwyth music scene? Or
Yeah, there was a bit of a
yeah,
scene there.
okay,
There was a bit of a scene there, and a
mm.
band prior to us called the Crockets.
Yeah, I know the Crockets. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They were an ABBA band
oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
essentially. Yeah, and we did a single release with them. We did a double A side with them.
was this Murray the Hump?
Yeah, Murray the Hump
Yeah,
Days. That's right. Yeah, we did a double A side, and it did really well. Sold out. Got really good reviews in all the kind of indie because back then there was just loads of indie magazines.
yes,
The Barfly magazine, Melody Maker, NME, all these, and the readership was like huge back
yeah.
then as well. Sort of, couldn't think of the number, but
No, it was massive, wasn't it?
it was
Sounds
massive
and all that, yeah,
readership
yeah.
with these magazines. So if you got in those magazines, I guess it's the equivalent now of, getting on Six Music or something.
Yeah, yeah,
It's that sort of thing.
yes.
The amount of attention it would give you. So again in those magazines, obviously we were noticed by London labels. I don't know. It's all a bit, like a lot of people, who are in bands, I guess. It's all a bit hazy, that period,
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
just seem to remember we were in London all the time, We was Aberystwyth in London.
Fair old trip, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was a killer. Yeah, we were just
Yeah.
doing loads of gigs in London, and there was a bit of a buzz back then. Lots of A&R would come up to I think.
Showcase gigs
Yeah, well, we
as
didn't really
well.
go in for that showcase thing. I think we tried to avoid that because
Yeah, I never liked it.
yeah, it was always you sort of see these bands and it seemed like the be all and end all for them was to get signed, and it was like, well, that's not why we're doing it. We're not doing it to sign. We're doing it because we want to write good songs and and sort of build a following, really. So we didn't really go down the showcase route, and I think that aloofness kind of made it a bit more attractive in a way. And so A&R guys would come out to Aberystwyth, and they do
Wow.
that 6-hour drive from London. Yeah, they'd come all the way to meet us and things, and it was like. So we had I can't remember their names now. If Gwion, my good friend and fellow band member, was with me, he's good with the names.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had loads of guys coming down from Warner's, Virgin, London Records. You know,
What
they
year
just
was that, Matt? Was that in
it's probably
mid
about,
nineties,
yeah, late 90s, yeah.
late nineties?
Yeah,
Okay.
fag end of the 90s, 98,
Yeah.
99, something
So,
like
like you
that,
say,
you
the
know.
Cool Camry thing kind of happened sort of mid to tail end of
Yeah,
nineties.
so it was after that, but
Yeah.
you know, we would definitely, so, you know, people would say, oh, you're like the next Gorkies or you're the next
Yeah.
Furries or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was obviously impossible shoes to fill.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, they paved the way, those guys did. You know, Gorkies and the Furries, particularly for me, you know, those are the
Mm.
bands that I really admired from that scene, and they kind of made Welsh music, it could be taken a bit more seriously then, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's a different story, almost a different story again. Because that Cool Camry thing, I mean, I always thought of it myself as a bit of an urban myth. Really, it was like just like a media construct, you know, just a handy thing. You know, let's have two things which start with C and put them together. You know, but
Yeah.
like with Wales, prior to the fact, you know, what you said about A&R to me like that lemmings. You know, you lead them to the cliff and they kind of jump over. So they just went from place to place to place, and you know, like you say, there were those bands, Catatonia, those bands were coming through, and then all of a sudden Wales was the place to go. But before that, you couldn't even get them over the bridge, and there they
Yeah.
are, then all driving all the way down to Aberystwyth. Was that anything to do with the Crockett's breaking through? Was it like a buzz going on? That, you know, let's go to West Wales. That's where it's at now, sort of thing.
Um, yeah, possibly. It possibly had something to do with the Crockett's, but I think, you know, I think it was down to us really. I
Your
think
press coverage obviously did a lot for you.
yeah, the press coverage, and we did record some really good demos. I think we did some great demos. In fact, I think the demos are probably better than the
I hate
polished
it when that
recordings
happens.
of
Yeah,
Murray the Hump. Yeah,
yeah,
with Murray the Hump, I was so like, you know, I was, again, it was before I went to Newport Art School, and it was like the song, you know, it was all about the song for me, and I didn't really pay that much attention to the studio.
mm.
But then I'd end up with these recordings that I didn't like, and then you start to realize, oh, hang on, it's the songwriting and the production. You've got to get both
Yes,
right.
yes,
It's not
yes.
it's not one or the other. You've got to get both right. And I think I spent years then processing that. You know, I you know, my emphasis, I tried to move my focus away from songwriting towards production. Probably dropped the ball with songwriting because I was dwelling on the production so much, and it's
Mm.
just finding that balance then,
Yeah,
which I think
yeah,
I've got now. I've got some sort of handle on. Both of them are of equal importance. You know, it's the record, isn't it? You know, that's what Brian Wilson was chasing after. You know, it's not just the song, it's not just the production, it's both, and that's the record. So
yeah. I
yeah.
wouldn't encourage you to go quite as, you know, severely down that route as Brian
Well,
Wilson,
I've got
but
a sandpit in my home in my home studio. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I don't.
so when you came out of Newport, then did that sort of take you into lecturing and teaching at that time or not?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was it. I mean, that was the I didn't expect to go down that route. But as I say, I think Chris Morris was a real influence on me because he was such a brilliant lecturer and he was so inspiring that I got completely seduced by the idea of adult learning and, you know, just a kind of safe space where you can experiment and sort of realize what learning can be. You know, it isn't just, you know, being sort of talked at by a lecturer and here's some
Hmm.
facts and information that I'm now going to pass on to you and you're going to trot out to me. You know, it was a more kind of elastic concept, really, learning, and it was reflective and it was dynamic and all these things, and he just encouraged this sort of environment of experimenting and play, creative play, and I just thought it was, you know, and I could see parallels between that and being a musician. Really, you know,
Yes.
there's a show you put on, and you know,
Hmm.
you want to entertain, but you want to have something more than just, you know, just sort of smoke and mirrors and what have you. Content. You want content as well. So I
Yeah.
saw these parallels, and it just sort of it just suited. I think it suits my my kind of, you know, my psyche, my psychology. You know, like it's a way you can put creativity into being a teacher. So after I graduated at Newport, I took a job with Newport Uni in Tredegar, of all places. because Tredegar is in Blaenau Gwent, you know, as part of the Newport, you know, county.
Yeah.
And I worked in the CCLL there, you know, Community for Lifelong Learning.
Oh yeah.
And they had some satellite campuses in Tredegar, Ebbw Vale, New Tredegar,
Cross Keys,
Torfaen,
maybe.
all around. They didn't have a Cross Keys. Well,
Okay.
I
That
think
came
Cross
later.
Keys, would that be Newport? Would it Cross Keys?
I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
is it? Maybe that's you know,
Gwent area.
Glamorgan's
Yeah.
domain.
Yes.
So this is prior to the merger, you know.
Okay.
So I was working in Newport, putting on events, building websites and all, just stuff like that, you know, as part of the CCLL. And then I met you know, my boss there was Jeremy Gass. He, you know, proper old school socialist from Newport Union. He run the Community Centre for Lifelong Learning. Well, he ran this strand of it, which was the satellite campuses called the Community Community Universities in the Valleys.
Okay.
He ran this strand. So they had funding.
Yeah.
And he was a big influence on me then. Again, this idea of, you know, the value of adult education. So he retired now, Jeremy, but you know, any chance to drop his name in for anyone who is listening, you know, he's an amazing man, actually. Jeremy Gass, gentleman.
Yeah, I don't know him at all, actually.
But he was Newport.
Yeah. So
know.
I didn't really spend time at Newport. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
So interesting what you're saying about creativity. You know, particularly at the moment, with where we're at with music and where we're at with this COVID-19 and where we're at with this kind of spinning circle of occasional lockdowns and
Yeah.
musicians going out of business and venues going bust and everything else. How important is the notion, you know, within your teaching and your performance stuff, really, of creativity? How much does kind of creativity matter to you, and how much does it sort of run through what you do?
Oh, it's central. You know, it's absolutely at the heart of my teaching and my practice as well. The idea of creativity, and you know, it's central to how I assess work. You know, how I, you know, it's how I
That's interesting.
Form the way that I deliver work, and trying to get to grips with the concept of creativity has really helped me as a songwriter as well. Understanding that it's you know, we can easily think creativity is this kind of free, unbridled sort of, you know, oh, it's the inspiration and everything, but actually creativity is that is part of creativity. But the other part of creativity, thinking about, say, Ken Robinson's definition of it, you know, it's
I love Ken Robinson stuff. Yeah.
Original thought that has value, you know, and that's key, isn't it? Having value, having an audience, connecting, giving meaning to an audience, and that's where the craft comes in then. So it's the inspiration, the original thought, but also the idea of how can we craft this original thought now into something that has meaning for an audience. And that's where, you know, the teacher can come in a bit and sort of help sort of shape and give their experience to students, crazy thoughts, you know. Perhaps.
It's almost in a way a little bit like, I suppose, a producer working with a creative band sort of thing, is it?
That's often how I see my role, actually. If I'm feeling quite highfalutin, you know, I can think, oh yeah, you know, it is very much like I've done a bit of production with artists. It's quite exhausting though.
Yes.
And so I do more mixing and mastering is some of the sort of the client work I do, if you want to call it that. But yeah, absolutely. My experience of producing and being produced, I definitely see that that's kind of what my role is sometimes as a teacher. Certain phases through the year, you know, the academic year, you know, when it comes to major projects, absolutely, that's how I see myself. It's more of a producer role, trying to translate what they try, you know, what they're saying and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, we're on kind of the same page. You know, we both work at University of South Wales. We both got a love of music, and you know, you've done it more successfully than me, but it's kind of there. But the thing, what I find with the university degree courses is when you have a brief, so you give the students a brief, and then it can be quite kind of constricting, you know, and to find that space for creativity within the brief, that's kind of an art form in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's how do I answer that one then? Yeah. Um,
Hard to
I,
achieve, isn't it?
it's hard to achieve. I think it's sort of yeah, it's a hard one to answer that. But I
Are
think
you conscious of that at all when you know when you're doing your stuff? I don't know whether did you think about that from the student's point of view to try and give them a bit of creative space, I suppose.
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I like to set. I've been watching this program recently called Taskmasters. Have you seen that with Greg
No,
Davis? It's
no.
really good, actually. It's kind of a little bit of a cheeky anarchic Channel 4 show. And basically, they put comedians through their paces by setting them some really crazy tasks. And the tasks get even more random as the program goes on. And again, seeing yourself as a teacher, you're almost like a producer. You're almost like a game show host as well, and you set in tasks for students. And sometimes I think it's good to set like sort of really crazy out there tasks for them and see how they get on with it. How can they solve these problems that you've set them, And watching that program, I was watching with my wife the other night, and I was thinking, oh, this is great. This is the format I'm going to use in my lessons. Taskmaster, that branding. So then it just gives you permission to use the craziest tasks, like write a song in the time it takes you to boil an egg or something, and just see what you come up with. And the good thing about that is that it takes the student out of it a little bit. It takes the students' kind of emotions and bearing their soul as they songwrite, it takes them out of it. And it's like, we'll observe how you've got on with that task, and we're looking at that task really. And it's a good way in then to look at their songwriting, rather than sort of, and you're not tearing them apart then, you're tearing their attempts at the task apart, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's particularly great teaching technique at the moment as well. To try and find space for creativity, but also a little bit of fun and a little bit stuff which is on the edge, and stuff which isn't so defined and constricted. I think that's a really really good way to go, actually.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't do enough of that, but I wish I did.
yeah. Well, we could all do more, can we? Because it is exhausting doing it that way sometimes, because it's so like divergent, so some of the results you get are like, whoa, what the hell? How do I process that and give feedback to that? You can have some crazy examples of work, and I mean, I've done some other things as well. There's one lecture I do called Zen No Mind, which is a Joni Mitchell saying someone asked her, how do you write songs? And her answer was Zen No Mind,
Wow.
So I get my students to, sort of try and enter liminal states and practice meditation. And how do you write when you're in a liminal state? What comes out, and document the first 5 minutes of what you write when you pick up a guitar. Very often when I wake up in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and I'll pick up the guitar, those first 5 minutes, something nice will come, and then I'll put it down and I'll forget, and I'll be chasing those 5 minutes through the rest of the day, So document it, press record for those first 5 minutes and see what you come up with. And it's great. I've had some of the students bringing work into the workshops, and they just they play their tapes back, and they just la all out of tune and everything. But and then there's the gem. There it is within about 45 seconds into the process. There it is. There's the tune. Great. And that's where you need to work on now. And it's just sort of listening together and those sorts of things. Yeah. We could all do more of that, I suppose.
Yeah, I had an idea for a hook line for a song I've been working on this morning. I think I got to record that. I had a cup of tea, I forgot all about it,
Yeah, it happens all the time, and we think, oh, that's good enough. I'll remember that one. That's good enough. I'll definitely remember it. And you never do. Yeah. And then you spend the rest of the time chasing that idea, and it's like, oh, that's the worst thing. So get it down.
It'll come back at some point. Maybe come back tomorrow morning in the first 5 minutes, like you said.
Exactly. Yeah. Try it.
Going on to keys, of course, and achieving a fair bit of kind of airplay and significant airplay and some profile. And Radio 1, Radio 6, these kind of stations, I think, have picked up on keys. Am I right in saying that?
We've had a bit of Six Music play. Yeah, we haven't really had much Radio 1. If we have had Radio 1, it's just through the good old Hugh Stevens BBC introducing play.
Who, of course, is stepping away from BBC. I don't know whether you want to speak about Hugh a bit. I think you know him a bit, don't you?
Yeah, oh God, me and Hugh go way back. Yeah, I remember him when he just started at BBC Sessions in the Nations, when
Yeah.
he was just wet behind the
Oh, young,
ears.
wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, so young, yeah. And I used to crash at his flat.
Oh, did you?
We used to come up to, when we were Aberystwyth boys then in the
Yeah.
band, we used to come down to Cardiff, and he'd always give us a roof over our head. Hugh and his friend Baz Geraint, they were like big fans of Murray the Hump. And yeah, I mean, me and Hugh go way back, and he's obviously just gone on to bigger and better things, and it's amazing to see his career, how he's just been able to take it all in his stride.
Did you see his the thing the film that he loaded up to say goodbye, where he's lying on the
Yeah,
beach?
it was lovely with that drone, isn't it?
Yeah,
I thought, oh,
brilliant.
that's a wicked idea. I was
What
thinking
a
about that
great way to
yesterday,
go.
actually, thinking
Yeah.
it's a good music video idea just to
Yeah.
do something with drones. Yeah.
What about the kind of about Keys as an act? He says you and Guion. Was Guion involved with Murray the Hump as well? Has he been there
Yeah,
all
he
the way?
was. Again, it makes me sound really loyal. I'm not particularly loyal, but yeah, me and Guion go way back.
Yeah.
He's just a great guy. He was the best man at my wedding.
Oh,
And
great.
he's just a lovely, lovely man, Guion, in my band. Sometimes our musical ideas clash. He has some idea. I always win though, because
Of course.
I'm a stubborn, stubborn as a mule. But he's just, there's no ego with him. He's just a great guy to have in the band.
How does it
So
work between the two of you? How do you how does it work now? What's the partnership in terms of creating stuff?
well, obviously with lockdown, it's all gone a bit sort of
Yeah.
belly up. Really, it's just gone mad. We just try and do what we can, but generally the sort of process is I write. I'm writing all the time. It's what I do. I've had to come to terms with that, but I'm a songwriter.
Yeah.
So I basically bring songs to the rehearsals. That's how it works. And I many is the time I've stopped doing it, thinking I'm dominating again. I'm taking over again. So I'm not going to bring songs, and then we'll have rehearsals, and then there's no songs, and it's just, well, it's boring to go through the same tracks all the time. So someone's got to bring something. So then I end up sort of reluctantly almost bringing songs. But then once you flick that switch, then a whole flood comes then, and so I generally would bring the songs to the rehearsal studios. I mean, how it works, the formula that we've hit on really in terms of the process is I'll bring some ideas with David Newington, Boy Azouga, who's the drummer in the band.
Oh, yeah.
He and I will have jam sessions together, sort of figure out the structure and all this. And I love, I mean, drums is, rhythm and is such a central sort of thing to writing songs for me, riffs and grooves and all that. So I tend to bring it to the drummer first, and then we build things up, and then I've got momentum, and then I've got someone in the band who's there, I've built up and then we just jam them then, really. And I'll just
you playing acoustic guitar then, Matt, when you're doing that, or is that
no?
electric?
It's an electric. Then I'll go electric. Yeah, I've gone electric then with Bob Dylan style.
Do you write it on the guitar, which is to your right at the moment?
Yeah, sometimes I'll write on this.
Yeah.
It's just a little old, crappy little Yamaha acoustic from an ex-girlfriend, which I never returned.
Well done.
It's I've had it for years now.
And they're okay, the Yamahas, aren't they? So you're writing all the time. So you're in your office at the moment, and it's quiet.
Yeah.
So you might just have an idea, and you just like noodle around with it, will you?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that occasionally, but I don't find that's happening in lockdown. I'm so busy with work. I'm sure it's the same for you. But my workload is just
sometimes it's crazy.
gone crazy that I've not really written since we've started delivering again, which is horrible. I feel a little bit blocked, and that's not nice for me. But I'm busy though with my own music, because we are working on another album, which we want, and most of those songs are were written, in the summer. So I've got enough to get on with. We've set ourselves up with Libertino Records, and Griff and I from Libertino, we've sort of agreed, let's get another album out, or at least start the campaign campaign in August 2021.
Mm.
So that'll be 3 albums in 2 years, you know, which is pretty good going, considering I've got a full-time job and 2 young children and it's COVID. But
Yes.
I'm up for that. I'm up for that challenge. But I can feel myself sinking into that whole like rabbit hole of creating an album. You know, it's no light feat. You know, it's a big thing. You know, if you want to do it properly, if you want to make something that is of value, that and I can we just get in. We've laid down a couple of drum tracks now, and I can feel myself. Right, this is going to demand a hell of a lot of attention. Plus, I'm going to be doing my masters in January. The new cohort are coming in. How the hell am I going to balance all this? But I'm up for it. I'm up for the challenge. You know.
What does Guion do then? What's his bit?
Guion is basically, he's a guitarist and a sort of backing vocalist and generally lovely man to have around and hang around with in a band, you know. And he's just a hell of a funny man. So you know, that's important at our age and my age. You know, you know, it's not
any age.
Yeah, at any age, yeah. But it's, you know, it's fun. You know, being in a band is it needs to be fun for us now. We're all older. You know, we're all older. It's not like about you know, a dream or anything or career. It is. It's all about
expression, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's friendship. It's about friendship and just
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about I've never thought of doing that actually ever. The idea of getting a tune and then the first thing you do is working it out with the drummer, you know, just not an approach I would ever try. But I really like that approach. Like you said about people having, I suppose, a sense of positivity and being fun and, you know, being up for it. I haven't without saying too much, I haven't always had that with drummers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, drummers are, you know, there's so many jokes about drummers, isn't there? You know, like what do you call the people who hang around with musicians? Drummers. What do you call a drummer that keeps time? Roland. You know, there's loads of these jokes, and they're there for a reason. But I think, and I've gone through. I mean, we like Spinal Tap. We've gone through loads of drummers, but Dave is quite exceptional because he's a songwriter as well. Yes, and so he understands.
Yeah, that's true.
He understands the process perhaps a bit more than a lot of other drummers who are, you know, have a different perspective on it, you know.
So I still, you know, I'm in a couple of bands. My main band, the main guy I go to is my bass player because he's more of a producer really. So I'd go with him and he's kind of always there. Every idea I come up with, he's always kind of in. Which sounds like you've got that with Guion and Dave, but I don't necessarily get the same response from others, and it just makes such a difference, doesn't it? If people kind of buy into that idea and how can we make this song work, and you know, kind of, I suppose for a certain extent, it might sound a bit pretentious, but to kind of respect you as a songwriter, I suppose, and think, well, those are the hook lines, so let's kind of make it work, you know.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's pretentious at all. I think that's crucial, isn't it? That you have that trust with who you're working with, that you trust their judgment, they trust your judgment, and you know, you've got to earn it to some extent as well by delivering the goods. You've got to feel like, you know, what you're bringing to the table is strong, you know, and you're not phoning it in, sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, it's like, you know, I guess for the film guys, it's like casting, isn't it? You know, if you've got to get that right, you've got to get that chemistry right, you know, with your players and your band, and it is about, sometimes it's about not rejecting people. That sounds a bit harsh, but just, you know, not you know, just there's certain people I won't. It just, you know, it's not going to work with, and then when you find the people that you know it will work with, just cling to them for dear life. You know?
Exactly. Like it's like you say, it's like finding good friends. You know, you always want them around in your life.
And I also think as well, in a band, you know, the level of commitment is fine for other people.
It varies, doesn't it?
It varies, yeah. Some people have a different level of commitment, and that's probably good. Otherwise, you'll have too many cooks, you know.
Yeah,
there's my ideas, there's Guion's ideas, and there's Dave's ideas, and we're the sort of nexus, if you like. That's where most of the push is coming from, and then the bass player and our other drummer Gav, you know, they're like, boys, sounds wicked, just whatever you want, they just support it, and that's
Yeah.
good, I think,
Yeah.
And when like James, our bass player, he's an amazing bass player, Jimmy. When he does pipe up and say, I ain't doing that, it actually counts then, he really does pick his battles. Whereas
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a gobshite, and I will just go, I'll just, but that's frontman's rights, isn't it? As a frontman, you've
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
you have that's you're allowed to be
I
yeah.
was listening to some of your stuff. I'm pretty sure is there a song called Homeschooling? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
homeschooling. Yeah, that's on the newest album. Yeah.
So is that actually biographical because of your autobiographical rather?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I was that there's two girls on there. They're my
They
daughters.
are your daughters.
Um,
Okay. I was going to
yeah,
ask where those voices
that's
came from. Yeah.
yeah, that's Agnes and Nancy on there. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to do the whole homeschooling thing in lockdown one was a complete shambles.
Yeah.
My wife managed it. She's brilliant, but the kids, they see me, they say, oh yeah, as if daddy's gonna, discipline us. They were at the time they were 7 and 3. They're 8 and 4 now,
Hmm.
so they're a proper handful. And I just thought, all right, okay, let's just for homeschooling, let's do music.
Great idea.
So we recorded a couple of things actually, but one of the things we finished was that little ditty, homeschooling.
It's really nice.
Yeah, it's sweet, isn't it? We just knocked it out in one afternoon. Really, I was brushing the floor, the tune came into my head, and I thought, right, let's go upstairs and just get this down quickly. And I managed to get it down really quickly before they got bored.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. It's totally non-contrived, and I wondered, whether they were your kids. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that's come out of lockdown. There's been a few examples of that. Every now and again, you'll come across something. I was seeing one the other day. It was a version of a Talking Heads song actually, and the dad was playing on the guitar, and then he had one of his kids banging things, and someone else playing something else. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's weird, isn't it? Lockdown. It's been, it's obviously been restrictive in so many obvious ways, but it has also been an enabler in many ways.
Yeah.
I found lockdown one particularly tough, though. I did. If I'd had to have gone through the kids not being in school again, I think I probably would have had to have sectioned myself, because it was really tough. Just the responsibility of keeping them engaged and stimulated every day, constantly.
Yeah.
Was too much for me. Plus working as well. I really struggled in lockdown. So keeping the schools open, and I know it's controversial, but it's just a godsend.
Yeah.
For me, for lockdown two. Yeah.
I totally get that. I've got two daughters, but they're a lot significantly older, so I don't have that issue, which
Yeah.
I'm quite thankful for, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, I know. I can see that it could be a lovely thing, lockdown.
Every day, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was every day. Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, the weather was nice.
Yeah, it was then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
Not
hope we're
now,
not there again soon.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your software and recording techniques, because I really like the fact you're sort of interested in quite lo-fi kind of approaches, aren't you, to stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I am. I love the whole lo-fi ethos, and I take it as a real triumph when students, as part of their major project, want to do things in a engaging with lo-fi aesthetics. I'm always like, yes, it's another one that we've managed to convert to the dark side. It's there's lots of reasons for it, I suppose. I mean, taste is one of them. A lot of artists, songwriters I admire, come from that lo-fi world.
Who would they be?
Well, people like Elliott Smith, Sufjan Stevens, or Guided by Voices.
Yeah.
Tame Impala, even. Lots of bands that I admire have come from a kind of do-it-yourself attitude, really, or do-it-yourself approach. And on top of that, I just love the sound of kind of distorted and degraded sounds that goes back to like people like Lee Scratch Perry, the sort of Jamaican reggae producer. He's an early exponent of aesthetics, in production. you know, and I also come from, I remember, when I had the bug for recording, I was 16 and I bought my first four track, a cassette four
Was it a
track.
TIAC or a Porter
No, I
Studio?
couldn't afford a TIAC. It was a Fostex. It
Oh,
was,
Fostex. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
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 It wasn't particularly sophisticated. It didn't have any tone on there or anything. It was just
Hmm.
what you put in was what you got back. And I just loved the sound of cassette, the way that it just filtered all the high end off, and everything was woolly and muffled. So I've always loved that sound. So yeah, and also as well, I think it's a lot for students, say, and for someone like myself who's a songwriter first, producer sort of second, to,
Hmm.
to go on an SSL desk and record, like on your own without assistance and engineers. It's really hard, to make things sound good on an SSL desk takes years of experience, and
Yeah.
otherwise it just ends up sounding really brittle and overproduced, and just it's
Yes.
not, it takes a lot, it takes years to master the an SSL desk, whereas a four track or an eight track, you can get some good sounds out of it with minimum microphones and minimum skills, I think.
Yeah, I quite like some of the things like the Tascam recorders as well, where you can do four tracks on like a handheld recorder. Have you tried any of those things? They're quite
Oh yeah, are they like the Zoom thing? Is
yeah,
that what you
the
mean?
Zoom and the Tascams. Yeah, you can do the four track recordings on there too in
Yeah,
stereo.
I've not tried them,
Mm.
because well, I just haven't tried them because
You have needed to probably.
I've needed to, and these all that sort of stuff feels a little bit small for me.
Okay.
It's like, it's all a bit fiddly, and I
Yeah,
can't
I
I
get
can't
that. I
I
get that.
can't really be bothered with that. I like things to be
Yeah.
fairly sort of tactile and just so yeah. So often what I'll do is I'll actually record the rhythm tracks, the drums, and an additional guitar. Like I say, that setup of me with Davey, I'll record that to cassette. I'll do it to four track cassette, and then dump that into Logic, and sometimes dump it back out
Okay.
again, and then dump it back in. And I just like the sound of, the sort of degradation and
Yeah.
things.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, you either like it or you don't, don't you? I suppose with that.
Well, yeah, yeah, and I've done enough pristine recording and post recording. I've done enough, and it's like I can do what I want, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally get what you're talking about with the four track thing because it can't. I mean, obviously, the Beatles.
Yeah,
If anybody took the four track thing and made it work, is those guys. And the fact
yeah,
you only had a certain amount of tracks, and
yeah.
I love the kind of progressive introduction of other tracks and then building it up. That's quite exciting. Always been quite exciting to me, that kind of thing, actually.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously they were working on like 2-inch tape, not like I don't
Yeah,
even know what cassette is. It's like 1/24th or something of an
it's on the
inch, but
tiny thing, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, tiny thing. But yeah, absolutely. The workflow is the same. It's like you have a limited amount of tracks, and you have to think ahead. It's like snooker. You got to think. Well, if I
Yes.
I can't put the vocal on too soon because it'll have degraded once we ping pong and
Mm.
bounce down. So yeah, you're thinking, along the lines, and sometimes you'll have a spare track, and you're like, hey ho, let's put something on there. I've got a track spare, so it just gets you thinking about arrangements and thinking smart about that.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously working in Logic, you've got, or Ableton, they're the two doors that I use. You've got 300, 400, 500 tracks if you want it.
That's the trouble, isn't it?
But it's not
You're inclined to
300
use them
times
then, aren't you?
better.
No,
Yeah, it's not 300 times better.
no,
It's
no.
just, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The Beatles, obviously, a pick up on a kind of. I'm guessing you're a bit of a Beatles fan, are
I'm,
you?
I, I'm obsessed with the Beatles.
Right.
It's almost to an unhealthy level. I'm completely, if it wasn't for the Beatles, I don't know where I'd be. They,
So,
they are
so
my, they're my God, like,
oh, that's great because I mean, the Beatles are a different league altogether. But quite often I find with students, and I'm of a certain age, and I mentioned something which has maybe happened, in my world a few years ago, but they just haven't got a flying clue. There was a guy called John Peel. Really, really, what did he do then? But then so when you talk about the Beatles, and I don't mean this in a sad old get kind of way, but if you had to sort of explain to students maybe, what made them so great? Why were you so fascinated by them? What was it about the Beatles that's totally grabbed you? You know, why were they so important?
Well, they looked cool, you know. They had great hair and they wore amazing clothes. That's most of the time, you know. You'll never see a photograph of the Beatles where they look bad. They were the most photogenic band,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
They're amazing. I do a couple of lectures on the Beatles because I feel it's we do a popular music course, and yeah, I mean, they are 50 years ago, 60 years ago, even, you know, it's old, and pop music is so, you know,
mm,
fast moving and transient. But to not talk about the Beatles in a popular music course is kind of like not talking about Shakespeare on an English literature course. You know, you've kind of got to talk about the Beatles because they, you know, they transformed, you know, basically what they did, we're still processing, you know, in terms of popular music, I believe, not just them, but primarily them. And the thing that I love about the Beatles is it's an endless fascination. Is this the idea of collaboration?
mm,
You know, the tension between John Lennon and Paul McCartney is something that I'll never resolve. So I'll always be fascinated by it. These two contrasting, you know,
yeah,
personalities, and yet so similar as well.
mm,
But it's also the idea that, you know, they were immensely popular, they had mass appeal, and yet they were revolutionary in their ideas and radical in their ideas. And
yeah,
the idea of, you know, this sort of these radical artists gaining mass appeal, you know, it's rare. You know, it's so rare. You know, it's Picasso,
yeah.
Beatles,
Mm.
and it's really
It's a
hard to
handful,
find.
isn't it? It's a handful.
There's a handful, yeah. It's really hard to find those in popular music, you know.
Mm.
And it's just a brilliant story, and it's only 8 years old. It only lasts for 8 years, you know.
Yes.
It's 62 to 70. That's pretty much the period I'm interested in. The recording
Mm.
years. It just lasted for, was it 6 or 8 years, and you know, when they split, George Harrison was 26 years old. You know, it's just
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Last Christmas, I bought my wife. She's a big Beatles fan. I bought her a Beatles calendar, and what I noticed flicking through the pictures, what you said about the look, it's like how they mostly, almost always, right, in this picture we're going to wear this, is going to be the outfit, this is
Yeah,
the facial hair we're going to have,
yeah,
this is the haircut we're going to have. And
yeah,
they were also, you know, going back to what we said about being into it, they were
yeah.
this is the concept, this is us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were all on the same page. The four-headed monster. That's what Mick
Yeah.
Jagger used to call them. You know,
Mm.
and yeah, they exactly. Yeah, they were so committed to it. It was probably. I mean, you know, it's probably unspoken as well. It was like, oh, you're wearing things like that. Oh, I'll go. You know, they sort of edged each other on, didn't they? I don't think
Yeah.
they sat down. Right, next week, guys, we're all going to grow mustaches and we're going to, you know, do. It didn't work like that. You know, it wouldn't
No.
have worked if it was like that.
But they were always on the same page somehow.
Yeah,
Even with that kind of, as you say, tension between the two main protagonists, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. It was a healthy tension. It wasn't
yeah,
like a hatred as what it did become, you know, for a while. But yeah, it was just that push pull between them, which is what you need in a good collaboration. You need that. You need two people fighting their corner, really. You know.
yes. And there's been a lot of examples of that, but it's
Yeah,
difficult to top Lennon and McCartney. Um, coming back to your stuff, Bring Me the Head of Jerry Garcia. Right.
yeah.
Firstly, the artwork, which is just great, really, and the title, and where's it all come from? You know, what's going on there?
um, yeah, you got to have a good title, you know. And I was on holiday and came to me basically because I just been to before prior to going on holiday. I went with a good friend of mine to the cinema. I'm a big fan of spaghetti westerns,
Hmm.
and a chapter art center. They were playing the film "Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia," and this was just playing through my head then when I was on holiday, thinking we need a good title for the album. We need a good title for the album. Bring Me the Head. I was watching that for great, and then it just came, you know, Bring Me. It was just like a gift that lands in your lap, and it was, you know, and
Great title.
yeah, it just sort of informed the whole album then from that title. I mean, the songs were being written, and it was, you know, and we were in the sort of arrangement process, I guess. But from that point on, it was like, oh, there you go. What would Jerry do? You know, how could we, what would we do for, you know, what would he do with this song right now? And so it was really helpful in many ways. You know, yeah, it's a really good title, and it's got it is fun. It's a fun title, I think. You know, it pokes fun at it slightly. So yeah, the artwork then was done by two good friends of mine. You know, from Cheltenham. Who used to live in Cardiff, you know, back in the day we'd go to gigs together and party on the weekends. They were good party friends, and they're both graphic designers. So Keith did it first. He did the first run of it, which was the collage, all the bits.
Yep.
And it wasn't quite right. It was a little bit raw. So we gave it to another friend of ours, John, who's a graphic designer. That's what he does for a living. And he just sort of psychedelicized it a bit more. And there it was then. It was like, yeah, brilliant. You know.
Yeah, it is as well. It is brilliant.
Cool.
I listened to some of your stuff, and I can't remember, it was a while back now, and I can't remember who I said it sounded like, and I think you were quite surprised about for what I said, and it wasn't exactly what you had in your head. But it's interesting with songwriting, isn't it? What you hear and what your vision is of stuff is often different. But I really picked up on the again, going back to the production. You know, it's kind of a beautiful sound, and the harmonies were lovely, and it's just, you know, just so unusual the way you put that stuff together. But you've kind of nailed your sound, I suppose, which is, you know, do you feel that you have?
Yeah, I do. You know, as I said, you know, it's been that process of, well, you never quite nail it, you know what I mean? But, you know, I do feel like we've made positive steps, because
you've got your sound, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got your sound.
Yeah,
exactly. As I was saying earlier about, I used to think it was all about the song, and you know, you know, the song, it will, to hell with the production, the song will come through. And then I realized it wasn't that, you know, because I was never happy with what I was hearing back. And I went really into, I realized, right, I've got to learn production now and arrangement. And I probably, as I say, to the detriment of some of the songs I was writing, they were a bit pedestrian, but just so I could learn production, really. And I feel now with Jerry Garcia, that was the first time where I think we've achieved some sort of balance between the production, the arrangements, and the songwriting, you know. And I think it's all, you know, when you get that right, it's alchemy, you know. You do getting that balance right, you know, and it's magic. Then you create, you know, that's what we aspire to do. That's what I aspire to do, is sort of create magic, you know, something that's magic, that's bigger than the sum of its parts and all that, you know.
Yeah. As it's funny, you dropped Brian Wilson into the conversation earlier, and there's sort of certain aspects of that in there, in the kind of subtleties of the harmonies. They're very well thought out harmonies, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's just a sweetness, really, you know, a lightness to it. You know, I do like light music as well, pop music, melody's really out of fashion at the moment, you know, amongst sort of bands, and you know,
so's musicianship, unfortunately.
Well,
in the signed field, unfortunately, you know, it doesn't seem to matter, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I value musicianship that much, really. I know a lot of songwriters I admire, you know, kind of like one or two chords, you know. It's not something that
I'm not hung up on it, Matt. I'm not hung up on, you know, I don't want to listen to a 25-minute solo or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of helps if you can play a bit, and, you know.
Oh, yeah. If you can carry it to, yeah.
Yeah.
I obviously, it does help. It helps if you can play, definitely, you know. But the idea of melody, though, is out of fashion at the moment. It's very much, you know, with bands like Idols and Working Men's Club now, and various other things. It's all very spoken word, you know, the Fontaine's DC. So melody's out of fashion, and I know, and for me that's like all the more reason to do it then, you know.
Yes.
Because it's I love melody, you know. It's something that, you know, I'm always drawn to it. So yeah.
It's funny how things go through cycles, though, isn't it? I mean, if you listen to if you listen to Radio 1, I suppose, you know, you listen to an hour of Radio 1 and it's not quite that bad, but you almost hearing the same sort of chords in a different order, you know. It's like it's very, very generic, actually, at the moment, I think, a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, I think chart music is an interesting one actually, and when we look at chart music in our songwriting workshops, a lot of our students will look at it with disdain. Because they're coming from a rock world or metal or jazz or things like that. So they will instantly think, oh, that's not for me, because of all those things you said. But when I think it's important that we understand what's going on in chart music though, because the intricacies and details are in other places. They're not necessarily to be found in harmony, in terms of chords, and some often as well, they're not even found in the lyrics, But when you look at the groove and the production, that's where the intricacies can be found then. So it's just a case of you with chart music you have to kind of look at it from a different perspective to what we used to, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm way older than you, so
But I mean, you can go back to like 60s
yeah,
articles, and that's how nerdy I am about the Beatles. I even read the Enemy from the 60s reviews of the Beatles
brilliant.
and various other stuff like that. And that argument was being made then, or production is more, that people need to get back to writing songs. Everyone's just obsessing about production. That
Yeah,
argument's been going on for years,
yeah,
And I was even reading the Sounds the other day from 1975, because there was an article about Roy Wood in there,
oh yeah,
who was someone else I'm obsessed with.
very clever. That.
And I was just reading the back there's a picture of Roy Wood, and on the back there's this article, "Is rock music dead?" From 1975. It's
Yeah,
even since rock was first conceived, or it's been dead.
yeah.
So
They say the same thing about radio, which is kind of my field. Radio,
yeah.
it's had a long death.
Yeah, exactly. A long old death. Yeah, rock music has had a long old death, and rock music currently is just so out of fashion. And as I said, it's the place to be, because then you find, and I'm finding this actually, the people who are the community of rock, psych rock particularly, is enthusiasts, and they are so positive and so welcoming of new music and new acts that it's just great. It's just, I find it really inspiring. I did a podcast yesterday with someone who's really into psych rock, and she was just so glowing about our music, and it's just
Great.
lovely,
Right.
because we're a very as you say, a long dying breed,
Yes. Yeah, I'm not actually sure what genre I put your stuff in. Actually, though.
Well,
I'm not
it's
sure.
hard to say, really, isn't it? Because like Jerry Garcia is a lot different to Homeschool in the album that we did.
Hmm.
I mean, they're only like 6 months apart, but they're obviously done in different circumstances.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Genres that's for journalists, isn't it, I
Yeah,
suppose. So
exactly. And sometimes, as I say, quite often you write a song and it's quite specific what you're writing about, and then at a kind of successful level, and then it's interpreted, and you see something else altogether, and that's okay. That's
yeah,
fine if
totally.
that
Yeah,
works.
I think
Uh,
sometimes that often tells you more about the person when you
mm,
sometimes we get some odd references made about our music from
yeah,
reviews, and I sometimes think, oh, hang on, that's a bit what? Oh, that tells me more about you and your listenership, what you're listening to,
yeah.
than what we're coming from.
There's a fair bit of there is a fair bit of lazy journalism which goes on. I think it
Yeah,
comes about when sometimes when you got to write, within quite a succinct word count.
yeah,
Like just very briefly, the band that I'm in, we took like a year to 18 months putting together an album, and it was just the best thing we've ever done. Best produced,
cool,
best artwork, um, you know,
awesome.
best songs and all the rest of it. And then A Magazine, which isn't too far away from where you are right now, reviewed it. And because we're of a certain age, they start talking about, oh, you can almost smell the beer and the pub rock.
Ah,
It was just so, I'm sure they hadn't even listened to it. It's just,
yeah.
they're a bunch of old guys. Therefore, they're this, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's I like I say, um I I like to sort of I listen and read enthusiasts of the music that I do, because
Mm,
that's a different, they come out with a different sort of agenda, I suppose, it's all about promoting it. It's about, you know, getting it out and getting, you know, whereas, yeah, some journalists, I guess, can be a little bit aloof and just, you know, you wonder what their agenda is really.
Yeah.
So and then you wonder how much power they have anyway. They don't have any power.
Yeah, I mean,
You know
and,
what I mean?
you know, I can't do anything about it, so you know, what
Yeah.
said about it, sort of thing. With yourself talking about good stuff, recognition and awards. You had some sort of success and accolades fairly
Uh,
recently.
Well, we've been shortlisted for the Welsh Music Prize, which gets announced tomorrow. The winner is
Oh,
announced
tomorrow
tomorrow.
is it? Wow.
Yeah, that's why I thought we could do it today, you know, rather
Oh,
than afterwards,
great.
you know, because
I knew it was coming up. I didn't know it was tomorrow.
yeah, it's tomorrow. You know, do you know, honestly, Steve, I don't want to win it really. I know that sounds like what, you know, but I don't, because I'm all right. You know, I'm a lecturer in university. I'm doing okay. I get to do my music, you know, and my boss actively encourages me to be a songwriter and a producer because it informs my teacher. I couldn't be in a better position. Whereas on the list, there's 14 other acts. There's some people who are full-time musicians, you know, and it'll do them good. They need it more than I do. Do you know what I mean? I'm really lucky. It's nice to be nominated though. It's great to be shortlisted. Of course it is. At my age, you know what I mean? To be validated. To be fair, we've been nominated before. The album we did previously got nominated as well, and that I didn't feel anything about that one because I wasn't as proud of that record as I am of Jerry Garcia. I'm really proud of Jerry Garcia. So then to have it validated, and really and the set to have it valid to have that shortlisted, to have another album shortlisted means it wasn't a fluke. You know, the first time. So I'm just really pleased that it got shortlisted. I'm not expecting it to win. It's a psych rock album, you know, indie psych rock. It's not to everyone's taste, you know, long wig out guitars. It's been nominated. That'll do for me. You know, I'm more than happy with that. I'd like to see Carwyn from Colorama win it. I would, because Carwyn from Colorama gets nominated all the time. He did an amazing album last year called Joya, where he went out to Brazil to record with some, you know, Latino musicians. It's a fantastic album. He got shortlisted and he's been shortlisted again. So I'd love to see Carwyn win it because he is a full-time musician. He's doing it, you know, in these tough times, like, so.
Yeah, it's quite expensive going to Brazil too.
Well, I think he's shrewd. You know, he managed to get a documentary made with S4C as well.
Oh, okay.
So S4C probably, I don't know, probably helped with that. You know.
Well, by the time the interview goes out, the award will have been given out. So you'll have
you know, it's nice, but you know, it's just the fact that we were shortlisted is enough of a victory.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Us, you know, yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, exactly.
We talked about kind of what's next. I don't know whether you've got a figurative title in your head or any starting points for the new album, which is going to come up, we think, next summertime.
Yeah, next summer we're going to start. Yeah, we're going to start the campaign next summer. You know, if all goes to plan. I mean, like I said, I've got a hell of a lot on the cards coming up. And I'm starting the new Masters, which was postponed over the summer. You know, for an autumn launch. We're starting in January with the new songwriters, so that is really going to keep me occupied. But yeah, we're aiming for an August release. I do have a working title at the moment, which I'm not going to tell you.
Secret, of course.
It's a secret, of course. And the approach to the album is somewhere in between Jerry Garcia and homeschooling.
Okay.
So homeschooling was very homespun, acoustic, you know, and Jerry Garcia is not. So we've found that we're striking a balance between those things. I want to do it, you know, on my 8-track and my 4-track.
Nice.
In some way, shape or form. But at the same time, I do want those drums recorded live, and so
we're getting there.
We're getting there. We've managed to lay down about 8 drum tracks. I received one yesterday from Dave, he's doing some of them at home, and it was like, oh, I had to text him saying, mate, you have to do that better. It just wasn't very good, you know, out of phase drums and all sorts. Like, you know, so you know, but we're getting there. We, you know, I'm very excited about it. But as I said, you know, I can see myself slipping into that. I'm going to be in my sandpit, you know, Brian Wilson with, you know, like big long beard and just the whole process of trying to do an album, it takes
Yeah.
up a lot of time, you know. It's no mean feat. Like,
Have you read the book, by the way, the Brian Wilson autobiography?
is that the one written by Eugene Landy? Is it the one that Eugene Landy helped
N-
write?
No, this is one I think he wrote himself.
Okay.
I've recently read it. I can't remember the title, but I really loved it.
Yeah.
Just to say, which I think you would too. What I really pick up, I'll tell you the story really briefly. I love the ways Brian Wilson phrased things. So there were certain kind of really beautiful little phrases that he put in there, and I started
Right.
almost unconsciously really writing some of them down. And in the end, I've written a song which is called Green Tree House, because that's where Brian Wilson lived.
Right.
Most of the lyrics are lines that I've borrowed from his own autobiography, you know. So it's
Nice.
quite an interesting idea for a song. I just thought it was a bit of a mad thing to do, but I'm really pleased with the song in the end. But he's absolutely fascinating. So
Well, yeah, I find the Beach Boys. I don't pay. You know, I've been through my Beach Boys phase. You know, where I
yeah,
completely immersed myself in their golden period. And you know, I'm even one who will stick up for Mike Love. Actually, you
okay,
know, like there's a
one of
lot
the
of
few.
yeah, one of the few. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Mike Love, not War. You know, it's you know, he wrote the lyrics to "I Get Around." You know, you know. None of the guys go steady because it wouldn't be right to leave your best girls home on a Saturday night, you know.
yeah.
That's just a great line. Like he wrote some killer lines. And actually songwriting is melody and lyrics. It's words and music, you know. And, you know, a lot of us find the music easier. A good lyric, you know, is so important, you know. And I think sometimes in the writing, you know, Brian Wilson, he wrote with Tony Asher, Van Dyke Parks, Mike Love, you know, he needed a lyricist, like, you know,
Yeah. He
I think
acknowledges that in the book, by the way.
yeah, good, because I think sometimes the Beach Boys fans, you know, the ones
Yeah.
I know, my mates and stuff, you know,
Mm.
it's all Brian, it's all Brian. It's like, well, yeah, I know, there's some killer lyrics there, you know what I mean?
But Van
Uh,
Dyke Parks, he gets a lot of credit in the book.
Yeah, yeah. That's when Mike Love started, you know, kind of being a bit cruel, actually, isn't it, with Brian? Like, what is this ego music
Yeah.
we're singing, you know? But I love Van Dyke Park lyrics. I do, yeah.
I was going to ask you one more question. You've almost kind of answered it, but in a kind of a shortish, kind of pithy kind of way.
Oh, right.
You're starting the masters thing in January. You're going to have a bunch of these people who want to, you know, either are or want to be, or you know, songwriters. So in your opening kind of intro bit, what's the most important thing you'd get across to them about, you know, maybe people should bear in mind with songwriting? You talked about melody and lyrics, but is it kind of a in your opening things? Is something you try and get across?
Right, yeah, absolutely. I try to get them away from the idea of looking at songwriting as about components, you know, about melody and chords and lyrics. I try to get them away from that
Hmm.
and get them to think about. We return to perhaps the first point we made about creativity, and that it's about creativity, and we are exploring creativity. We're developing and nurturing yeah, a relationship with your own creativity. Now, that's what we're doing. That's the gift I can give them. I can't give them a record deal. I can't give them, you know, a publishing deal. I can't give them a #1 record. I can't promise any of those things. But what I can do my best to give them is, you know, to encourage them to be more in touch with their own creativity, and that's a relationship that they can take with them. I hope, you know, after the course. And as we've said, you know, that is really important. If I didn't have that relationship during lockdown, it's become even more apparent, you know. If I didn't have that relationship with my own creativity, I think I would have probably gone under. I really would have, you know, in lockdown one. It was a real help for me, turning to my guitar, writing songs and things. So I try to get them away from these ideas of, you know, like verses, choruses. So then what we talk about with songwriting is it's about tension, release, you know, and like, you know,
Mm,
contrast and
mm.
repetition. And if we think along those lines, then that opens possibilities up to us. We don't have to write to set structures or set formulas. All we're trying to do is generate tension, release to create magic, really.
What a great answer. Thanks, Matt.
No worries, man. Have a lovely evening. See you soon.